Fast forward to the Bureau, where director David Brennan was already spiraling. He asked Adam if Mr. Aura Farmer was actually in the building right now. Adam confirmed it and added that the runestone offer barely came up. David freaked. He asked if the man really only cared about the dragon's dead body and not the god-tier loot inside it. Michael, the deputy director, stepped in with logic. He said that skills were priceless. Hunters pay more than a house for a decent runestone. So maybe Mr. Aura Farmer saw more value in the corpse than the runestone itself. Then something clicked for him, and David asked the real question. Was his power limited to monsters he killed himself? That was when Michael froze. What if he didn't need to kill the monster? What if he could just walk up to anything dead and claim it? If that was true, then my glorious king might be planning to turn Kamesh into another shadow soldier. David stood there panicking and muttered to himself how no one should have that kind of power. But Michael hit him with a reality check. Denying my glorious king could cause an international incident. That man could start a war just by blinking wrong. So now they had a choice. Either let him summon a damn dragon or deal with the fallout of telling him no. After some serious thinking and probably a mental chess match with himself, David decides to personally drag my glorious king down to the secret zoo where they keep monster corpses. The elevator ride was awkward as hell. David tries to start a heart-to-heart, but Jinwoo is just staring into space. The moment they hit the facility floor, my glorious king locks onto that leftover magic like a bloodhound. He thinks about how the oversized lizard's aura was still overwhelming even after he was in the far beyond for the past 8 years. He thinks about how, if this beast really joins his pet collection, he might as well just uninstall difficulty settings from life. Now they were standing in front of the oversized corpse. David then drops the lore bomb about how Kamesh got folded by 5 national-level hunters, but in the raid that bastard did devastating damage to humanity. Now the entire Bureau runs off the mana battery jammed inside his remains. David tries to wrap it all up with a smug little, "Are you good now?" But my glorious king just walks forward like he owns the place. Tells the side characters to back off while David tells everyone to stay put and watch. The first try at shadow extraction flops hard. But round 2 goes nuclear. The room fills with smoke. Bones start dancing like it's a graveyard rave. And out rises Kamesh, the Calamity Dragon. The whole room starts shaking. The containment glass explodes, and David's voice cracks mid-panic as he screams about breath attacks and how everyone's about to get grilled alive. But my glorious king looked at Kamesh and told the dragon to chill. The moment Kamesh hears that, he flips from murder mode to puppy mode. The whole room went, "Wait, what?" as they saw this giant corpse start wagging its tail like a fanboy. The beast bows and goes full loyal servant vibes, talking about how he once served the king of mad dragons and now swears fealty to the new king. My glorious king watches him, thinking, damn, this guy has more rage than half the monsters I've ever met, and he's still got enough self-control to be useful. He realizes Kamesh isn't just some strong summon. He's a whole different tier with an actual personality. Then the king starts connecting dots from the system. Monarch of Destruction, Monarch of Giants, Monarch of the Beginning. He was on that main villain menu this whole time. But before he could even think about something, Kamesh's body begins to crumble. Kamesh told Jinwoo that this little reunion came way too late, and now he have to go. My glorious king watched in silence as Kamesh began to crumble, like expired DLC. He tried calling on the system one last time to stop the process, but the system basically hit him with a cold no. Kamesh looked up in his final seconds and said he envied the other shadows who get to vibe with the king forever. Then he dropped a final warning, telling Jinwoo that humans have borrowed powers from the rulers, so he has to be wary of them. With that, his massive skeleton collapsed. My glorious king turned to Adam White and hit him with a calm, "Sorry about the mess. Tell Brennan I'll cover the damages." Then he walked away and immediately punched the metal door like it personally insulted him. Agents behind him flinched like background characters in a disaster movie. Later, Jinchul caught up with him, all panicked, asking where he'd been. My glorious king just said he was somewhere with no signal. He then asked him if he met with Jinho. Jinwoo looked at him, not knowing what he meant by that. Jinchul then told him that someone came to pick him up, saying, my glorious king wanted to meet with him. So Jinho left to meet him at the bureau, but my glorious king never sent one. Now the math wasn't mathing. Adam checked the visitor logs, and there was no mention of Jinho. Jinchul looked like his soul left his body. He said a hunter from the Scavenger Guild came to pick Jinho up 2 hours ago. Adam got real serious then. Scavenger was close to the bureau, but they didn't have clearance to act like this. He called Laura from the guild, and she instantly caught on that things were off. She asked if my glorious king knew. Adam said not yet, but Jinchul brought it up. Laura promised they'd figure it out, but when Adam turned back, my glorious king was already gone. The man dipped faster than a dad who said he was getting milk. Cut to my glorious king on rooftop patrol mode, scanning the city with his shadows. He finally realized he'd made a mistake. He didn't plant a shadow on Jinho after saving that old man in the hospital, and now he was getting that same gut feeling he had with his sister. He summoned the whole crew and sent them all across the city to hunt Jinho down. Meanwhile, Thomas Andre was stomping around asking for Huang Dong-su with murder in his eyes. In some random warehouse, that rat Dong-su stood over Jinho, who was bloodied and barely conscious. Back in the city, my glorious king was scanning rooftops, listening in on everything in the hope of finding something about Jinho. My glorious king scanned the streets and skies like a walking apocalypse, but still got nothing back. That meant only one thing. Jinho wasn't in the city anymore, and if the kid had been taken without a fight, it wasn't some weak-ass mob of randos. Normal people can't overpower a hunter, so Jinwoo concluded that it was the work of a hunter. Jinho might be D rank on paper, but he wasn't going out like a background character in a filler episode. That's when it clicked. The Scavenger Guild. And if that name's in the mix, then so is Huang Dong-su, the salty little brother of that dungeon-cooked meatball Huang Dong-suk. That man's been waiting in the shadows like a bitter ex, and now that Drippy Woo set foot on American soil, dude's out for answers. Or revenge. My glorious muttered through gritted teeth, saying, if anything happens to Jinho, and honestly, we all know what comes next when he gets that murder aura. Meanwhile, back at the Scavenger Guild HQ, Thomas Andre was getting updates that they couldn't find Huang. Guy went full ghost mode. Thomas sighed, wondering how a clown like that could be so bold unless he was counting on Thomas to clean up after him. He rang up Laura while mentally kicking himself for letting his hunters act like unsupervised middle schoolers. She reported that with help from the Hunter Bureau, they tracked 3 shady detours in Huang's movement history. Thomas told her to deploy the whole squad, saying that he was going in personally. When he asked how she got the Bureau to cooperate, Laura dropped the truth bomb that scared everyone straight. She told them there's a possible deathmatch loading between America's #1 and Korea's living cheat code. The Hunter Bureau, meanwhile, was collectively shitting bricks. Their agents reported that the Scavenger Guild had canceled all raids and sent out every single member. David Brennan was like, hold up, if all those S ranks are moving, then Thomas is definitely involved. And if Thomas is involved, this isn't just drama. This is a goddamn international incident. Cut to the abandoned factory where Huang Dong-su was still in his torture villain era. Jinho was chained and bloodied, but still alive somehow. Huang kept saying he just wanted the truth, but his hands were saying otherwise. He told Jinho he'd be healed every time he was near death, just so the cycle could continue. Then came the final straw. Jinho, barely conscious, gave this crusty Walmart villain a full middle finger salute. Man had 0 lines, but still managed to drop the hardest moment of the arc. Huang snapped, slammed him into concrete, and declared the fun was just getting started. One of the goons spotted a silent figure standing in the shadows. Huang squinted. His dumbass thought it was an orc from a nearby dungeon break. Took off his jacket like he was about to throw hands with an NPC. He had no idea he was about to square up with a shadow. Back in Korea, peace was pretending to exist. Drippy Woo's mom was sipping her tea and staring at the TV like she wasn't the mother of a walking genocide button. She wondered if her son was safe over in the US. Baru, meanwhile, lurked respectfully in the background. He just thought to himself, if there's anything my king can't survive, then this whole planet might as well uninstall itself. Just then, on the news, they saw him. My glorious king had touched down in America. And as soon as that broadcast aired, Beru felt it. That shift in the air, that pressure in the atmosphere. He realized that the king was pissed. He offered his mental prayer for the fucker who was on the wrong side of it, knowing full well that it was going to be his last day on God's green earth. Cut to the States, where the Scavenger Guild's convoys were tearing through the streets. Thomas Andre was in the lead car when he felt it too, that murderous aura. He told the driver to stop saying that it had already begun. The man kicked open the door and ordered the others to catch up. As he bolted off, one of his men sighed, saying, guess we're going to get slammed with insurance claims again. Meanwhile, in the murder basement, Huang Dong-su's ribs just got sent to another dimension. Drippy Woo had arrived using Shadow Exchange, swapping places with a shadow orc, and punching Huang so hard the factory got PTSD. Jinho looked up through cracked ribs and bruised everything, smiling because he knew salvation had arrived. Drippy Woo sprinted to his side, tried to use a potion, but those fuckers had messed him up good, and the potion was not going to have an effect on him. He glared at the goons and asked if he was a healer, but of course the first man pulled the "I don't speak Korean" card. That's when Hwang came crawling back from the hole Jinwoo had sent him flying through just a moment ago and translated it for him. Drippy Woo stared dead into that man's soul and repeated himself, "Heal him," but that dumbass said that he had to first ask his superior Jinwoo, then face-planted him to the floor and said, "Fine, your shadow will do the healing seeing this carnage." The second man panicked. He looked at Hwang and said this wasn't part of the job description, but he also followed his friend's example. Jinwoo slammed his sorry ass so hard the floor cracked in protest. Hwang watched all this and somehow still had the gall to talk. He stepped forward and demanded answers about his brother's death. Jinho weakly warns Drippy Woo to be careful. Drippy Woo tells him not to speak in his condition. Then came the moment. Hwang, dripping rage and delusion, asked if Drippy Woo had killed his brother and the other hunters. My glorious king just hit him with the coldest reply ever dropped in manhwa. "Go ask your brother yourself." No yelling. Hwang snapped and charged, but he was a lifetime too slow. Drippy Woo dodged, countered, and sent this man flying again. Before Hwang can even touch the floor properly, he looks up and sees my glorious king already parked next to him. Hwang tries to swing again, but gets folded again. My glorious king grabs his head and starts smashing it into the pavement like he's trying to erase Hwang from existence. That's when Thomas Andre finally shows up. He looked at Jinwoo and ordered him to stop. Thomas then turned to Hwang and told him he warned him not to mess with my glorious king, and then turned to Jinwoo. He asks if Hwang's still breathing. My glorious king looks him dead in the eyes and says he's not done yet. Thomas gives him one last warning, saying if he lets Hwang go, he'll pretend none of this happened. But my glorious king just asks what happens if he says no. Thomas stares him down and says, then it's not a request anymore. My glorious king yeets Hwang into the sky without a second thought, shifting his attention to Thomas. As Hwang's airborne self is busy praying for a new spine, he starts begging Thomas in his head to do something, to finally fight back, to save his face. My glorious king turns to Thomas like it's finally time for the main event. Thomas tries the old ego play and tells him he might not know who he's talking to. My glorious king shuts that down real quick, says it doesn't matter. That hits Thomas hard because deep down he knows this man knows exactly who he is and just does not care. Cut to Thomas's villain origin story. Poor immigrant family, raised on scraps, but he had hands, and he used those hands to beat his way to the top. Power, wealth, and respect are all earned through violence. Dude became the CEO of punching people into obedience. He truly believed if you hit hard enough, you deserved to rule. He thought he was king material until he ran into Mr. Aura Farmer. Back in the present, his scavenger guild shows up, thinking they're going to back up their boss. But they barely step in before something explodes past them and wrecks the whole block. Dust settles, and they realize it's their big boss, Thomas, who just got launched like a rag doll. Thomas gets up bruised, pissed, and dead silent, signals them to stay back, starts walking toward my glorious king like he's got something to prove and not much to lose. His squad freaks out and starts running after him because they already know this is about to go downhill fast. Meanwhile, Mr. Aura Farmer casually tells one of his shadow boys to take Jinho to the hospital and use anything and everything to save him. No budget, no hesitation. After that, the fun part begins. He turns to Thomas and the rest of the guild and drops the real threat, his shadow army, an entire battlefield's worth of monsters lined up behind him, ready to wipe the floor with these scavenger clowns. After seeing that my glorious king had no intention of backing down, Thomas starts grinning like a lunatic, talking about how this is finally a worthy fight, like he's been waiting his whole life for someone to disrespect him properly. Deep down, though, he's already thrown the whole Hwang situation into the trash. All he wants now is to beat my glorious king so bad he can put his pride back together with duct tape. He tries one last bluff and tells my glorious king to back off and apologize, but in response, my glorious king just flips him off and stands there unbothered by everything that was happening around him. But not everyone was that calm. Thomas loses it. He starts transforming and says he's going to make him regret it, but my glorious king doesn't flinch. He tells his shadows to charge. Thomas yells for his own people to get in, and suddenly it's a full war zone. The tanks try to put up barriers with their shiny skills, but those walls crumble like paper. The shadow army smashes through, and the fight turns into chaos. But right as the shadows push forward, Thomas takes out a whole squad by himself, like he's swatting flies. He looks up and sees Tusk standing there, casting him of protection, trying to block him. Thomas charges straight through the magic shield and smashes Tusk in the face. While flying through the mess, he thinks none of his people are going to survive this if he doesn't handle it himself. He gets inside and sees the whole guild already clapped. Then he spots My Glorious King mid-fight like he's just casually handling side quests. Thomas jumps at him, but Iron gets in the way. Thomas yells and punches him so hard the man hits the floor. But before he can keep going, My Glorious King is gone. He blinks. Boom. Suddenly he's right next to him. My Glorious King pulls out the dagger and swings. Nothing. No damage. Thomas swings back and punches him so hard he sends him flying, saying that My Glorious King was a fool to look down on a national-level hunter. Then he uses psychokinesis to yank him back through the air, all the while feeling smug about himself, telling Jinwoo to feel the difference between their strength and shit. But My Glorious King is done letting this man talk. While flying back, he uses ruler's authority and stops Thomas dead where he stands. Thomas realizes he cannot move. He's completely locked in place. My Glorious King steps in and lands a strike so heavy it makes Thomas cough up blood and crash to the ground. He still forces himself upright, but it's clear he's rattled. My Glorious King charges again and throws his own words back in his face about strength and despair and beats him down with a clean combo. Thomas tries to block but gets overwhelmed and finally shouts that he's done underestimating this monster and begins transforming fully with his reinforcement skill. Meanwhile, the Hunter Bureau's rolling up like they're going to fix anything. Inside the car, Adam White is getting asked what's going on, and he's just like, there's no time to explain. The other guy says if they get any closer, they're going to be caught in the blast, which is a fact because right now there's a whole battlefield exploding downtown, and My Glorious King is farming bodies like it's another day at work. Back at the factory, Thomas was now a whole new monster. Meanwhile, My Glorious King was having a flashback, remembering what Kamish had told him about the 4 humans who got the ruler's powers. And now, one of them was charging at him like a rampaging bull. Drippy Woo didn't even flinch, moving forward, but then he stopped in his tracks. Thomas slammed the ground with a punch so hard the floor cracked. Drippy Woo dodged just in time, barely escaping the shockwave. Thomas wasn't done. He unleashed another skill, and the panic spread like wildfire through the guild members. They screamed, "Get away from him!" And their worries weren't without a cause because he had created a black hole that was pulling everything in, including the Shadow Soldiers. My Glorious King looked at the force and thought that without the ruler's power, he would have been swallowed up. Then, out of nowhere, a massive explosion ripped through half the building, and being the badass that he is, Drippy Woo just shrugged it off like it was a minor inconvenience. He then looked down as he saw Thomas screaming and charging at him, saying he was not going to miss for a second time. As the other hunters evacuated, Thomas launched himself toward Drippy Woo with the speed of a bullet. But Drippy Woo was ready. Mid-air, he stomped on Thomas's face and used the momentum to send him crashing down. Thomas tried to pull Drippy Woo in with telekinesis, but Drippy Woo countered with ruler's authority and yanked Thomas right to him. Thomas gritted his teeth and then said, "If you want to take me head-on, I'll gladly oblige." Then their fists collided and shockwaves ripped through the area. But Thomas's face went pale when Drippy Woo shattered his armor, giving him the coldest, most disappointed look ever. And just like that, Thomas was sent flying into the ground, and as he got back up with murder in his eyes, lost from logic, and consumed by rage, he threw another punch. But this time, Drippy Woo dodged it effortlessly and delivered a knee to Thomas's face that cracked his armor even more. By now, the Hunter Bureau agents had shown up. One of them told Adam White to stay back because it was too dangerous, pointing to the wreckage of Thomas. White squinted his eyes and asked, "What's that?" The agent replied, "That's Thomas Andre." Then they both stared as Thomas got beat into the dirt by Drippy Woo. While Thomas was getting his ass whooped by My Glorious King, internally, he was having an existential crisis and thought, how is My Glorious King a mage type? So this doesn't make any sense as to how crazy strong he is then. He gathered whatever energy he had left, shouting, "I can't lose like this!" But Drippy Woo was already a step ahead, blocking his strike and tearing off his faceplate. Furious, Thomas screamed, "I'm Thomas Andre! You think this is enough to beat me?" But Drippy Woo was having none of it. He came from behind and started wailing on Thomas again, saying, "I told you, didn't I? It doesn't matter who you are." Thomas took hit after hit, each one breaking his armor, his bones, and whatever dignity he had left. Thinking that things could get ugly, Agent White begged Drippy Woo to stop, But the man wasn't having it. Finally, Thomas, broken and bloody, croaked and admitted his defeat as he did. Drippy Woo stopped, staring down at the mess that was once the strongest hunter in the world. Adam thought to himself, staring at the mess, and wondered how many hunters in the world could do this to Thomas. Well, the answer was fucking clear. None except my glorious king. Then he thought how if word of this got out, the world would probably implode. He ordered the hunters on site to treat Thomas right away. One of them reported, every bone in his body's shattered, and the blood loss is off the charts. I can't do it alone. We need everyone. They also realized that despite the insane battle, no one had died. Adam thought, well, I guess it could have been worse. But just when things seemed to calm down, an agent found something that froze everyone. They rushed over and found the lifeless body of Dong-soo. And as for Drippy Woo, he was gone, like a ghost. Back in Korea, my glorious king sat on top of a building like he had nothing better to do after wrecking the U.S. He had used Shadow Switch to bounce out of America the second Thomas Andre folded and swapped places with Peru. Peru was already healing Jinwoo at the hospital like the loyal shadow homie he was. A new shadow showed up kneeling in front of my glorious king, and it was none other than that greedy clown Dong-soo. My glorious king looked at him and said, "You died chasing things you could not handle, so your name is Greed." Then he told him to kiss the ground, and Greed did not even flinch.